What we're going to do for our assignment for this week is to analyze, I call these analysis tools, right? We're going to analyze the area of the covered panel, right? So how much of the actual panel is actually left after we've subtracted from it. And we're going to analyze that against some other item. So for instance, the glazing behind it, or you could just say the massing, right? Whatever surface is behind it that it's supposed to be protecting and shading, you can analyze it against that. Um, so in order to do that, we need to do a couple of things. We're going to have to first offset the original surface inward to give us some kind of glazing analysis element. And then I'm going to show you another way of generating a secondary architectural tectonic, but using a different type of geometry. So right now we've taken what was originally a curved surface, and then we broke it down into flat panels. But if we want to have, for instance, maybe it's a smooth rail-based shading system. So let's let me see if I could just pull up a quick image of something that I'm kind of referring to. Right, so something like this right here. If you want to create a shading system that's smooth instead of panelized, then you would have to use obviously a different kind of geometry. Now this is a version, or this is an example of one that actually is panelized after it reaches out. Okay, so you just need to be aware that you could go smooth like this, or you can go panelized like you see or saw in the other one I clicked, wherever that went. Okay, but I'm going to show you how to do it smooth in this instance where we now have made it panelized. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of this particular idea, right? The beginning of this definition, and we're going to look at the original surface, right? Right now, let's go back to top view. You can see that the original curved surface is kind of circumscribed around the edges of our flat panel. What we'll have to do, because technically the glazing wouldn't exist on the outside, not usually, what we'll have to do is move or offset this surface inward so that it lives inside the actual panel itself, okay, so that the panels are protecting it. And so that's found under surface, and I think it's under utility. Yeah, and it's called offset. Now be aware when you double click and you type in offset, there are many different ways of offsetting things. Make sure that you're getting the surface offset. That's the one we want. So basically, offset doesn't, even though it's a direction-based kind of operation, offset doesn't need an actual direction. So when it says D, it's asking for distance. And then T is, I think it's whether or not it closes the edges. I could be wrong. I'll look into that one for you if it becomes necessary. But anyway, because it's a warped surface, when you offset it, it already knows where it's going because it just offsets all the control points based off of their normals, right? So the B rep here is going to get plugged into offset, and you won't necessarily see it because it looks like the default for some reason is 0. That's odd. Usually it has an actual number. But we're going to make a slider. We'll say 0 is less than 2.5, less than 5. So here in perspective, you can see that it offset it outside of the panel, but we want it to go inside. So we actually are going to convert this to a negative number. So we'll go to math, operators, and we'll use a negative, plug it in, plug it in. Now that surface lives on the inside. Let's also kind of bring it a little closer. You can verify in the top view that it doesn't encroach upon the panel system. So the panel system, like I could bring it all the way up here, and then it's actually, you know, kind of poking through on the curved edge. So just make sure it's just inside.
Do you want it to be side, or do you want it to be noticeable?
Uh,
Like a bigger number than 2.5.
Just something like this. You know, so it's reasonably close.
Could you put in a negative, like the slider? Could you put in a negative domain?
Yes. Yeah. So with a slider, if you knew that it was going to go that direction, which I never really bother thinking about it, I just wait till it goes the wrong way and then I just make it a negative. But if you know it's going to go that way, you could just type in -5 less than 2.5 less than 0. Now your slider is going to go back to 0.5. It's a good question. All right, so this is our glazing surface, right? And I'm not going to bother panelizing it. In reality, it probably would be panelized just like the other one. But really, this is just kind of a high-level analysis exercise. And it's not necessary for this exercise, so I'm not going to take that extra step. But the other thing that I wanted to show you is how do you generate a radial element that's going to, be attached to this system that we've already broken down to a flat panel, right? So I'm going to actually go into, let me just show you on Google, I guess. We're going to do something like this. This one is panelized. Again, they're not all panelized, but really I'm going to show you how to take a curved element and just kind of extrude it outward. And you can use either the curves from it or the surface that you create from it in order to generate other geometry. Okay, and for us, we're going to do perforations, and we're going to test it against vertical perforations. So we're going to do horizontal shades, measure what the coverage is, and then we're going to do vertical shades and measure what that coverage is going to be. Okay? Actually, we might not test them against each other, but we will test them. So in order to do that, at least on the geometrical end of things, we can use, again, the original BREP surface. Technically, we could use this one, but because it lives inside the panel, obviously the sunshades are going to be attached outside, so we probably want to use the original BREP instead. So the original BREP has been pre-broken down for us. If you recall, when we turn on the, and I'm going to turn some of this other stuff off so you can see. Let me go back up here. So this original BREP was already broken down for us, or at least part of it was. We have individual curves that have been broken down into panels that are sort of edges that we can use to extrude or offset. The interesting thing is you can offset or extrude those curves and they will move off of the surface. And I'll show you what I mean. Well, is it worth? Yeah, I'll show you. I'll show you what I mean, and then I'll show you a better way of doing it. So under set and list, I'm going to do another list item off of this edge. And using a slider from 0 to 3, I can select the bottom or top. In this case, it's the bottom here, so I'm going to move it up to the top edge. See that top edge there? So using that, I can do an offset curve. So offset curve is under curve and utility. And curve is going to request the curve to offset, the distance to offset it, and then the plane that you're offsetting it in. Don't worry about corners, really. So let's just kind of start having at it here. The curves that we isolated, we're going to plug in. And you can see that it already kind of defaulted to the XY plane. That's good for us because it's going to go, horizontally out from the building. You might have to change that if you're going to do something custom, but that works for now. And then all we have to do is change the offset distance. So I'll make a slider from 0 to 2.5 to 5. Actually, this is an instance where I know it needs to go the opposite direction, so I could type in -5, 2.5, and 0. Plug that in. And pull it off. So now these are extruded 5 feet off of the building itself. And I have the ability really to just take that curve at the edge and the curve that I isolated using list item, and I can loft them all together. It's super duper simple, or ruled surface actually. So I'm going to go to surface and freeform. I'm going to use a ruled surface, and I'm just going to go from A to B, like that. Now, is this the best way of doing it? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on whether or not you want to mimic the same subdivisions. This works very, very well for if you want to mimic the subdivisions, but you won't be able to necessarily or easily join them all together at the end. You technically can, because you could just use a solid join or a region join. But a better way of doing this without having to use the the existing number of subdivisions would be to just do it off of the you do a secondary divide surface actually. So I'm going to go from I'm going to copy this information here, the subsurface, the divide, and these two counts, and pull it down. I'm going to pull this back actually, like that.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Mine didn't do the top layer of shading per se.
Okay, I'll come troubleshoot. Let me just kind of finish this thought because it's pretty much already there. So in this case, what I would do is just take this same subdivision and reduce the number of breaks in the vertical plane. So that would just mean that I reduce this down to 1. And then I can plug that into the list item instead. Oh, whoops. Why didn't that work? Did I do the wrong one? Maybe I did. No, that one's right. Hang on a moment. Oh yeah, that's right. I'll just copy this down actually. Let me do this instead. So you can plug this in and then just make sure that you're selecting the right edge. Why didn't that work? Oh. That's weird. That is very, very weird. Oh, because I didn't deconstruct. Okay. That's what I'm missing. I'm missing this deconstruct burette. So I'll put this in here, and I got to grab the edge. There you go. There. So I'll turn these off now. And the benefit to using these now is that there are no pre-existing breaks in the panel. Okay, so I just want you to be aware that sometimes, I want you to be aware from a design perspective that sometimes you're going to want everything to be aligned during all these breaks, during these systems, whatever logic and sequencing you're using. But in other times you might want it to be something different. And so you're going to have to basically just use your subdivisions similarly, but just change the logic, change the number, just change the algorithm so that it gives you the other product that you're looking for. Okay? Any questions before I come around and troubleshoot with a few of you that got lost? Okay.